Welcome back to the Rich Hot Free Entrepreneur here on Northwest Digital News. Carolyn Deacon and Kevin Hunter here on the broadcast today. We're going to talk about making money as a solopreneur. And if you're out there on your own and have your own business, making money is a really important thing. Is it not, Carolyn?
It is very important. And, a lot of times people go into this with such a servant's heart that they'll often put themselves as the last to be paid. And that's what I wanted to talk about today.
Well, let's get right into the meat of it. So one of the bullet points you had here was a saving strategy. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I always pay myself first. I didn't used to. And so that's what I'm talking about. And most of the people that I work with, and I do work privately with people all over the globe who are either small business owners, they're solopreneurs, they're teachers, coaches, artists, performers, you name it. But one of the things they have in common is they feel like they've got to make a certain amount of money before they start setting some aside. And for me, that couldn't be further from the truth. So I recommend taking out, up to 50%. I mean, this is online. Come on, our overhead is low. I'm not talking about brick and mortars. I end up taking 50% and pulling it immediately into an untouchable account. So that's what I recommend a lot of people do. The reason is if you've got it in there, you'll likely spend it if it's sitting in some sort of checking account. Mm-hmm. So, and then the other thing with being a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a lot of the times that income is volatile. It's not the same. It's not a steady paycheck. It goes up and down and yo-yos. So you've got to plan ahead for those months that might be less. And, it doesn't bloom all the time. Nothing blooms year round, at least in my experience. So you have your ebbs and flows. So it's good to take 50% off the top, 40% off the top. What's the maximum you can afford? And then I usually say, add 10% to it, take it aside and stick it in an account that is untouchable for at least a year. The other part of that I like to do is once a year, fund some SEP IRAs, which are for solopreneurs. They're kind of like a 401k for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And, it is tax deferred and you can add up to 25% of your income to that each year. And you can start one for as little as $250. Thank you, President Trump.
There you go. There you go. I like when you talked about making sure that people are putting that money away and in a place where they can't touch it readily. When that money is left at somebody's immediate disposal, it's like the half-eaten bag of chips. And sitting there next to your elbow, and when you think you're not going to keep munching on that, when it's sitting there, absolutely you're going to. And if people do that, I think about some of the well-known people in the financial world who even talk about credit cards, and they say freeze it in a block of ice and put it in a block of ice and leave it in your freezer. So when you start thinking that you got to go use that for something and creating more debt for yourself, you have to thaw out the iceberg first. And,
exactly. And I think,
particularly
with online businesses like what I do, I do not have a brick and mortar. I create a great full-time income from this little tiny studio in this farmhouse in Virginia. I do travel quite a bit, but most of my work is virtual. And that being said, that seems to be, a good thing for a lot of people. And I think that when you're doing work like this, you have to take into account that it's not always going to be the same. It's not going to always be hitting the same level. And you've got to treat it wisely. And the other thing too is that I think a lot of people, they don't charge nearly enough because of that servant's heart, which is a gift, but you really do need to maximize it. And what was the comment you just said before that, Kevin? I was going to comment on that. What were you just saying before I started talking? Something about...
I already forgot. my mind works so quickly. I was thinking about the analogy that you just gave about how they don't charge enough. And interestingly enough, just yesterday, I'm talking to a solopreneur, guy who has actually been around a business a long time, so he should know better. But solopreneur has never outgrown that not charging enough. And on a road maintenance contract that previous people were bidding at $29,000, he gave a $3,500 bid to do the same job. And he was like, well, I can make money doing that. I was like, Why not a $10,000 or $15,000 bid if you think
Yeah.
29,000 is
Yeah.
too much?
Yeah.
And
And I'll tell you something else. This is a bit off topic, but I see a lot of this new trend now with people realizing that, because it's online doesn't mean it's free and easy to make
yep,
money here. It's not. you
yep,
know but there seems to be a trend now where, spend this such and such amount of money and I'll give you this wonderful funnel or process, and you'll have, hundreds and thousands of dollars flooding your gates, within a matter of seconds. Great. But
mm-hmm,
in my experience, people still won't buy until they know you, like you, trust you.
mm-hmm,
So that being said, if you're a solopreneur, there's one of you. You've got to conserve your energy, which
mm-hmm,
means pull back that money, stick it somewhere you cannot access it easily, because it will get picked apart. So
mm-hmm,
I recommend sticking it in a CD, or another one of my favorite things to do is single stocks.
mm-hmm.
That may not set well with everybody, but it's been good for me. So I'll usually put that in. I have a few trusted financial advisors that I use. I don't want to learn it all myself, but I'll do my homework a little bit, but I'm not going to inundate myself with it. And that's worked out very well. If you don't want to do single stocks, you could do a group of mutual funds, but these things are not likely to be liquidated easily without a fee. And that's a
Bingo.
deterrent.
Mm-hmm,
And that's how you grow wealth,
mm-hmm.
on autopilot, without having to constantly hustle. Those are the three things that I wanted to make sure we got out today were: pull 50 or as much as you can off the top of every payment you get,
Mm-hmm.
and stick it in something that's not easily liquidated. That can be an SCP IRA, which is a 401k for solopreneurs. Look into it with your financial advisor. You can set it up in minutes. You can start it with as low as $250 and put up to 25% of your annual income in there once a year. The other point of that is to do groups of mutual funds or single
Mm-hmm.
stocks. There's a risk, but you can control that to some degree.
Right.
I like to work with people who can anticipate and go a little on the defensive if they see things tanking like they've been since this thing came up with China and the tariffs.
Right.
That's kind of driven everything down.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll come back up. But I'd like to know I've got a team that's on the lookout. So if things get crazy, they're going to make some changes. And there's so much available to us right now at the click of a button,
Mm-hmm.
with this to protect yourself. So you're in business for yourself, for the freedom of it. Take that and put it into your money as well. And wealth is freedom.
Oh, bingo. One last thing that I'd add to what you've shared here with a saving strategy, an investment strategy, is that the other thing as a solopreneur, and especially for somebody who's new starting out, they may not have a lot of established credit. And credit is something that can hurt you in given fashions down the road as well. So if you're going, well, I have to get lending institutions to work with me in order for me to build credit. Well, there's actually a what I call this a baby step that comes well before that you can kind of set that up, and take $550, go down to your local credit union, put the money on deposit, ask to take out a secured loan against that $550. The reason why I'm saying $550 is because it'll cost you $20 to $30 roughly to take this loan out. But once they put that money in a account, freeze the money, they'll then write you a check back for your $500 loan. You got the money to go pay your rent and whatever else, so it's not money out of your pocket, but that will immediately start building loan, and it is not reported as a secured loan. It is reported as a loan. And that shows
Very
up
good. Awesome.
and starts building your credit. And a friend of mine who took me up on this advice about 2.5 years ago was in the bare bottoms, like in that high-risk lending category 2.5 years ago. And just maybe a week or two ago, closed on his first house.
Awesome.
And that's how much his credit changed. And very much a entrepreneur on his own and whatnot, but that credit thing had to be fixed, and he fixed it entirely by doing the secured loans I just mentioned. So
Perfect.
all kinds of great stuff to consider, but make sure, as Carolyn has suggested, you guys, make sure that you're saving money and you're putting money away, because you will need it for when things dip. And it's going to hurt you in the long run if you're not doing this. Kevin Hunter with Carolyn Deacon on the Rich Hot Free Entrepreneur. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
This concludes today's live programming on Northwest Digital News. Thanks for joining us for this special broadcast. Heard around the world in more than 70 countries on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitch TV. If you enjoyed a story or guest we had here on Northwest Digital News and would like to strut your stuff on the broadcast, email us today at wainfo2017@gmail.com or call or text 360-545-3501. We're always interested in unique stories, topics, and guests to share with our worldwide audience. Before you go, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and comment on the live stream. And for those of you who'd like to financially support the broadcast, you can do so at patreon.com/Northwest Digital News. We thank you for your patronage. On behalf of Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgeson, Stephanie Hunter, and all the people that made this broadcast possible, I'm Kevin Hunter. Till next time, take care.